All right, so this lesson is going to be on dividing decimals. Yesterday or previously we learned about multiplying decimals and how we multiply regular and then move our decimal however many spaces, however many decimals there are in the factors. So with dividing decimals, there's a couple of things that before we go into how we divide decimals that we have to make sure that we understand. This is going to be a lot of vocabulary words. So previously we have talked about how we divide. We have our little division deal. So the number that's in the inside is actually called a dividend, and the number that's on the outside is called a divisor. And then our answer is called a quotient. So these are important to know, to be able to know what we're talking about when you hear the word divisor or the word dividend. If we look at it in a different aspect, we have our dividend gets divided by my divisor. So those are our vocabulary words that you're going to be hearing today in this lesson. So when we divide decimals, the first thing that we are going to, this is the most important part of dividing decimals. I'm going to highlight it so that you really know that this is super, super, super duper important. So when we divide our decimals, we're going to look at our divisor. And if our divisor is a decimal, then we cannot divide it. So your divisor, the number on the outside, cannot be a decimal. If it is a decimal, this is where we have to go and do some changing around and doing these steps that we're about to talk about. Okay, so if I have identified that my divisor, the number on the outside, is a decimal, then I have to take these steps. The first step is I need to make my divisor a whole number by moving the decimal point to the right until it becomes a whole number. So what I mean by that is if I have this decimal of 4.5, in order to make 4.5 a whole number, I'm going to take my decimal and I am going to move it to the right one time. And now I become 45. So once I have moved it to the right one time, it now becomes a whole number. If I have the number 1.87, this right now is a decimal, so I need to move it and make sure it becomes a whole number. So I'm going to move it 2 times. So I move it however many times I need to move that divisor decimal to make sure it becomes a whole number. Now, I can't just manipulate my divisor. I have to do something. If I do something to the divisor, I've got to do the exact same thing to my dividend. And remember, my dividend is the number on the inside. So I have to move the decimal in the dividend the same number of places to the right. Now, it doesn't matter if my dividend has a decimal place. It doesn't matter if it has a decimal. It's okay for it to end with a decimal. I need to make sure that whatever I do to the divisor, that I do to the dividend. All right, then this is the step that a lot of my lovely children don't take because they think, oh, I don't need to rewrite my problem. I can just divide it that way. But rewriting your problem and then dividing it like normal, that rewrite part is extremely important, especially with my kiddos that might not have the best writing penmanship. And the reason why that is because once we get to moving and doing all these little hoopies and where's my decimal and where's it not, it kind of gets a little crowded. So if we rewrite it so that we see it normally and be able to divide it normally. Step 4, I actually like to do step 4 before doing step 3, so I don't forget about my decimal. And this is placing my decimal in my quotient, which is my answer, straight up from where your decimal is in the dividend. All right, so let's look at some examples because we went through a lot of steps. So let's look at what all these steps mean as we divide this out. All right, so here our first example is 6.85 divided by 0.5. So here is my dividend, here is my divisor. First thing I noticed that my divisor is not a whole number, so I need to move the decimal. How many times am I going to move this decimal? Right, one time. So I moved it one time to the right. Whatever I do, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you couldn't see it. So if I've moved it one time to the right in my dividend, in my divisor, I need to move it one time to the right in my dividend. It's okay that this has a decimal. So now I'm going to rewrite. And so now I have 5, my division, 685. I need to make sure my decimal place is in there because you notice I moved it one time here and I moved it one time there. Now I am going to, like I said, I like to do step 4 and to put my decimal straight up into my quotient so that I'm done with it and I don't have to worry about it. Now I'm going to divide it normally. 5 can go into 6 one time. Subtract. Bring down can go in there 3 times. Subtract. Bring down goes in there 7 times. And so my answer is 13.7. Perfect, perfect. Let's look at another example. I have 0.4 and 8. I'm going to move my decimal once here. It doesn't tell me where my decimal is, so we know that it's at the end, and I'm going to move it one time at a 0. So now when I rewrite my problem, it's going to be 80 decimal divided by 4. 4 can go into 8 2 times. Bring down. Goes in there 0 times. So my answer is 20. And I can throw my decimal in there if I wanted to. All right, so that is dividing decimals. So really the biggest part of dividing decimals is knowing that if my number on the outside or my second number is a decimal, I need to make it a whole number before I can divide. And it's okay to have a decimal place or a decimal in my dividend. It's not okay to have a decimal in my divisor or the number on the outside. All right, so that ends my lesson on dividing decimals.